well-known Spurs fan Richard Curtis has joined. Well, should we talk football, Richard, at that point?
As you know, I'm a bit of an expert. I'm a bit of a faker, but I am very excited about Tottenham having won their first 2 games of the season.
It's quite good. We could talk football then, and Mark actually won't have any point of entry into the conversation.
Carry on.
Mark, I want to thank you for your recommendation of the best 5 films of the year. And I'm going through the list. We watched Good Vibrations the other day.
Isn't it fabulous?
I thought it was absolutely wonderful. Then I'm going to miss out the next 2 because they were too sad.
Okay.
And then I'm
you just do happy ones.
Then I'm going to do No. Well, No is vaguely political.
What were the next 2?
No. Oh, the next 2 were Beyond the Hills and The Act of Killing. They both sounded
The Act
very
of Killing
morbid.
is brilliant, but it's very, very harrowing. Beyond the Hills is wonderful.
And then a movie called Love Is All You Need, which I think is by my friend Suzanne.
Which just comes out on DVD on Monday. And
I'll watch it on Tuesday.
And the great thing about it is, loads of people said, how can we do it? Because they've just seen the poster, and the poster looks a little bit cheesy. They, how could I loved that film. It was like somebody had done a romantic comedy that was populated entirely by real people. And that joke, somebody said, well, it's like Mamma Mia done by Dogma. You go, yeah, and that's bad because what exactly? I thought it was... have you seen it?
She's a really... No, I haven't seen it. That's the point. I'm going to see it. She's a really great film director who's made some very wonderful, serious movies and a really good comedy in Danish when she was young.
No, well, it's a wonderful movie. Pierce Brosnan is fabulous in it, and Trina Durham is absolutely brilliant. You'll love it.
Are you excited, Richard, about coming around and telling us about your new movie? Because it only happens, very rarely. It takes a long time to make a movie. It's been a long time since you've been on the show. Do you still get fired up and evangelical about getting out there and saying, check out this film because, and then going off on one?
No, I'm too shy to say that. I would like to say I hope that if you do go and see it, that you will enjoy it. But I'm getting good reactions from people who see the movie, even though slightly strange ones. The main reaction to watching this movie is people say when they leave it, they ring their fathers, or their sons, which is slightly
why is that
peculiar.
Strange? I mean, the movie is about fathers and sons. Why is that a strange reaction?
Well, it's unexpected. The thing is, because I started in the world of only comedy, I'm desperately insecure unless the first thing and only thing that anyone says is
they laugh their head off all the way through.
Exactly, even though I know that there's actually some sad sections here.
I went to see it in Leicester Square on the same day that they were doing the premiere of the One Direction movie, which you're in, of course, briefly.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, of course, I've seen it
How
twice.
am I?
You're great. I've seen you in 2D.
4
and 3D.
seconds?
Seen you in more than that, about 7 or 8.
Oh.
But I've seen you in both 2D and 3D, and you're clearer and brighter and better, obviously, in 2D. But the funny, on the way in, obviously, it was the screaming One Directioners, and on the way out, coming out of the Empire West End, literally women standing around crying, and men actually, standing around weeping. So it was very, very interesting sort of emotional response from the crying to the weeping on the 2 sides of Leicester Square.
Well, I'm sure that they were crying with joy at
No, crying in a good way.
Well.
I mean, but moved, and I shed a tear myself.
We should at some stage
did everybody.
We should at some stage in this conversation actually explain what the movie is about. But can I just add, before you actually get to that, but I'm now trying to work out what the first thing I said to you, having seen the film, probably wasn't that I was falling around laughing. But I probably told you about a dream that I had about my dad. So I think the father-son relate. I think people will. That is what people. Well, yes, they laughed. Yes, they'll feel fantastic, and they'll ring their dad. I think
it's a lovely thought. And actually, I mean, the father in the film is played by Bill Nye, and we had a really interesting conversation when I offered him the film because he said, "I'll do it, but I don't want to do any acting." He said, I just want to play as close as I can to sort of a normal person, just so that people can, as it were, put their own dads into that slot when they're watching it. He didn't want to play a moustache-twirling science fiction character. And I think that's one of the charms of the film, is that Bill does it with such sort of...
Can I do the boring legwork of saying, do you want to just tell people who haven't seen it, just brief synopsis?
No one's seen it apart from us 3.
No, OK, so what's the story about for people listening to give them...
It's a film called About Time, and it is I think it's described as a funny film about love with some time travel. And it's about a young man called Tim who finds out when he's on New Year's Day, when he's 21, from his dad, that all the men in his family can travel in time. And when his dad said, what are you going to do with this enormous gift? He says, I'll try and get myself a girlfriend. And the first hour of the film is many hijinks of time travel to go backwards and forwards and find a girl and fall in love with Rachel McAdams and then lose Rachel McAdams and then find Rachel McAdams again. And then the film kind of also becomes about the sort of thought that if you had this massive gift of time travel and used it as much as you could, you might in the end decide that the best thing to do is simply come back to a normal day and, live your life with a bit less fear and a bit more relish about spending time with people you love.
Before we go any further and explain those thoughts and some of the themes that you just mentioned, here's a clip from Richard's new movie, This Is About Time.
Tim, come in. Do sit down.
It's very formal.
Well, yeah. This is an odd moment for me, because I had the same moment with my father when I just turned 21, and after it, my life was never the same. So I approach it pretty nervously.
Okay. When you're ready, it's all very mysterious.
Right. Tim, my dear son, the simple fact is the men in this family have always had the ability to, this is going to sound strange, be prepared for strangeness, get ready for spooky time, but there's this family secret, and the secret is that the men in the family can travel in time.
Fantastic. See, Mark was laughing his head off.
Yes,
you need to know that.
thank you
But you
very
were sitting
much.
next to
I'm
him.
delighted.
But Bill Nye, when Bill Nye does Bill Nye, that's all we want.
Yeah.
And you did admit he did do one Bill Nye noise.
He did a Bill Nye noise right at the front just to let you know it was him. Exactly, a signature.
And people, and many other people have said this to you, Richard, but just judging on the audio, which is what people will have heard just there, and they'll have heard one line from Donald Gleeson,
Yeah.
your main man, your hero. He does sound like Hugh, doesn't he?
That's such a surprise and such a weird thing because, of course, he's so completely not Hugh. He
doesn't look
he's
anything
an
like him
Irish
at all.
guy with bright orange hair. And it didn't even occur to us that he went down to Cornwall, he listened to Bill, and he tried to do the right voice. And then there is a scene in the movie where where Rachel and him first meet, which happens in a restaurant which is completely dark called Dans le Noir. And when we were watching it in the rushes, we suddenly thought, oh, it's not totally unlike Hugh's voice, although, of course, it doesn't really sound anything like it.
I suggested Cillian Murphy. Do you remember that 2 years ago, or whenever it was, you were casting this film, we said, who's great in Upcoming? I said, Cillian Murphy. You went, really?
Yeah.
It was a scary suggestion.
Yes, well, we went Irish. You just went for the wrong Irishman, as far as you're concerned.
Did it worry you at all that one of the most celebrated comedies of modern times is Groundhog Day, which has the perfect sort of time loop thing in it? So anyone who steps into the territory of time travel within a sort of romantic comedy is automatically up against Groundhog Day, which is like being up against, Annie Hall.
The answer is no. But it's not. I didn't go back and watch Groundhog Day. I don't know whether that was on purpose or not. I did love Groundhog Day. And if something's a bit like something good, then maybe that's good. I mean, Annie Hall's very like my favourite film of the last few years, which was 500 Days of Summer. And I'm absolutely thrilled they made 500 Days of Summer because it's a wonderful way to look at a love story. But actually, this film is very different from Groundhog Day.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Even though equally low tech, there are no time travel machines, funny noises, or psychedelic sound effects.
Did you spend a lot of time worrying about the time? Because there's a line in it in which the decent character says, "But won't we go back in the butterfly effect?" And Bill Nye says, "You think so, but apparently not."
Yeah.
And in a way, by that you go, okay, let's not worry about that. Let's just move on with what the film's actually about, which is not really time travel.
Yes, in a funny way, it's a sort of time travel movie. I did worry about and write a lot of scenes to do with money and power, because that's the first thing you think. I can win, I can put bets on things. And that was the line I'm proudest of in the movie is when Bill says, I've never met a genuinely happy rich person, because that was my way of, so don't go for money. That was my way of disposing of the whole problem of, wouldn't you go and, bet on the horses and become a millionaire?
I'm now sort of analysing all the things that I said to you after the movie, and I think the first thing that I told you about, after mentioning the dream about my dad, was I talked about the music. And the pop music is very big in your life, and you love pop music, and you've always thought long and hard about the music that you include. The first thing I said to you was you've got the first ever movie with half of Bellowhead in, which therefore instantly makes it fantastic. They're buskers on the Underground, because you can spot John Bowden a mile off. He's fantastic. And the other thing is, I remember quite a few years ago, you gave me a CD copy of Ron Sexsmith with a fantastic song which he did called Gold in Them Hills, which is, in a slightly sombre way, a fantastically, in fact, it's the most optimistic song you've ever heard. And you tried to get it into a movie a few years ago, failed, but it's here, writ large. Explain why you like the song and how you get it into this movie.
Well, in fact, when I first handed in the movie, it was called Tim and Time, in fact, or The Luckiest, which is a Ben Folds song that's at the beginning and end of the movie, or Gold in Them Hills, because Gold in Them Hills was in my mind from the beginning, because Gold in Them Hills is a song which basically says, life could look awful, you may be in real trouble, but just look again and you may find there's gold in them hills, that in your life, unexpectedly, there's wonderful things. So it was always absolutely central in my mind, and I tend to write listening to music to try and up my game. So when I'm feeling gloomy, I'll listen to All I Want for Christmas Is You to put me in a Christmas mood, as it were. And when I'm feeling shallow, I'll put on a bit of Nick Cave or Ron Sexsmith to try and add a bit of depth to the process. And that film was that song was absolutely central to me, you know, thinking about what I wanted the story to be. And it comes at the most crucial time in the whole movie, really, when he starts to just travel back one day at a time and live the life with a bit more relish.
And Nick Cave is in there as well. Is it difficult to construct a movie with these important musical bits? Did you know before you started filming that it was going to be okay?
I thought Nick would say no. So what happens is there's actually a line where Bill Nye says, and did you remember the Nick Cave track? But we've also got a take where he says, do you remember the Crowded House track? And we've also got a take where he says, do you remember that track? So that we would. But fortunately, Nick said yes.
We'll talk more with Richard Curtis in just a moment, get to some listeners' questions as well. Orna has some travel. It's 2:47. Richard Curtis is here. It's 10 minutes to 3. You have a little private conversation there, was it?
No.
Yep.
What was it? Talking about you. Okay, that's fair enough. I've never liked him, and he just comes on. I don't know what he does. But
Dear Bonzo and Ringo, this is our old friend Jeremy Dillon, aged 23, in Sydney.
Hello, Jeremy.
Australia. I'd like to thank my boyhood idol, Mr. Richard Curtis, for continuing to create stories which place a premium on love and joy in an age of cynical nihilism, and for The Boat That Rocked, a film which combines all that is good in Western culture.
Where did you say he came from?
He's from
Sydney.
Australia.
Sydney.
Okay. I love people in Sydney. That's kind of wonderful.
Mr. Curtis, About Time is your fourth collaboration with Bill Nighy, the coolest man under 70. Aside from his peerless acting prowess, what is it about Mr. Nighy that has kept you coming back to each other time after time over the past decade?
Can I tell you my favourite joke about Bill? Bill says there is no woman old enough that when she approaches him, she doesn't say, my mother is a great fan of yours. He says he gets approached by attractive women and thinks, and then he gets approached by someone who he thinks is the mother of the attractive woman, and that person says, my mother is a great fan of yours. Look, I think Bill's an absolutely extraordinary actor, and he wasn't meant to be cast in Love, actually. He just turned up for the read-through as a favour to the casting director, and he was just so big and stupid and broad in that. And then the next thing we did, Girl in the Cafe, he played the shyest, most neurotic, worried man in the world. I cast him because he's a lovely man, but always because he's also best for the part.
Heather Tucker, a question from our Facebook page. What is it about the bumbly, posh, English, beautiful, sophisticated American romance trope that so appeals? Is it contractual?
No, that isn't true, actually. And, I've got a feeling that the leading characters, because I tend to write, people who are a bit like me and the people I used to be friends with when I was that age. And I'm not very imaginative. I tend to set movies in the street I live in just because I know what happens there. I once tried to write a movie set in Boston. I didn't know where they shopped, so I try to make sure I'm telling the truth as far as I know it. And in this film, I cast Rachel McAdams because I love Rachel McAdams, and we just said she'll say no because of Time Traveller's Wife, so let's send it to her, because it's quite an interesting part in that she's got to go from being a first date young girl through a wedding to having 3 children. So I really needed somebody who I thought could do all bits of that, and I just think she's wonderful and compassionate.
There was an interview in Empire magazine recently in which you were saying that, you generally felt that, you like movies that's celebrating life and celebrating people, and you couldn't understand this sort of nihilism in movies. And yet we were just saying, people like Nick Refn has said that he very much admires some of your films, and you're sort of surprised by that. And I was saying at Fright Fest, they're the loveliest, sweetest, nicest audience in the world. Do you think there's a part of you that could be opened up to the great dark chasm of horror and realise that actually there's a lot of fun to be had there too?
I'm a huge fan, for instance, of Quentin Tarantino, so I like a bit of casual violence, but I have recently become sensitive to watching things that frighten me or make me sad.
Yeah.
And it may be because lots of sad things have happened to me and I see them around me, and I think when I sit down I'd like to be delighted. I think a high premium on delight in the cinema.
Do you have a laughs rule for whether a comedy works? I mean, do comedies make you laugh?
Oh, look, I haven't laughed since 73.
What was the last film that made you really laugh?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the last film, I don't know. I laugh every week at Modern Family. I laughed at The Trip, Steve's thing. Well, The Trip was turned into a film. Okay. I mentioned 500 Days of Summer. I absolutely adored that film.
And is there a part...
Knocked Up, what an unbelievable
you like that more than
yeah,
I did.
Yeah.
And is there a part of you that thinks... Because there's the thing with About Time is there is this very sort of strange, melancholic thing which grows during the film. It was interesting that in advance of it, I think the PRs were sort of trying to say, look, it's not a flat-out comedy. It's something else. It's a change of direction. Although it didn't feel... I mean, there are, in all your movies, that I still think my favourite scene in Love Actually, which I've now seen 20, 30 times after my wife went to America and just watched it on hard rotation the entire journey. The scene in that when Emma Thompson does the scene when she does the going off into the room to have a cry after is really dark and really heartbreaking, and still, I think, absolutely brilliant.
I mean, the thing is, oddly enough, if you do watch Love Actually, it is a slightly sadder film. Laura Linney's story is very sad. And that was the most extraordinary piece of acting I've ever seen in a room, Emma Thompson there, because she didn't have a word to say. We did 9 takes in a row, and in each one, tears fell from her eyes, and I don't know how she did that.
But it's not you being a brilliant director and pulling that performance, screaming and kicking out.
It wasn't so often the best bits. My favourite bit in this film is a scene on a beach with Bill Nye and his son, and all I remember is we'd run out of time. I was standing on a hill and shouted, "Go!" I think I even forgot you're meant to say action. Just go. And they did what they did because Bill and him were friends. So, no, I think probably the good bits are all other people's.
The Boat That Rocked is on TV tonight. We were mentioning it earlier because our friend in Australia mentioned it. It's on ITV at 10:45.
Do you know the best thing about the modern world is that if a film of yours is on television and you go on Twitter, you feel like you've written the best film ever made, because the only people who watch a film at night on television want to watch that film. You don't get someone watches the whole thing and say, this is a terrible film, I'll go on watching it. So I'm delighted that it's on, because I'll go on Twitter and someone will be nice. Of course, that now might tempt people.
Is it fair to
I'm
say
watching this Richard Curtis film and it's absolutely rubbish.
Is it fair to say at this stage that About Time is being better received than Boat That Rocked?
I think I think that may be true. Certainly, people are certainly feeling more emotional about it, and I hope that there are good jokes. I mean, it's funny.
Me saying that it moved me to tears isn't the criticism. I honestly consider films that make you cry as one of the highest. I love films that do that.
You cry all the time.
There's an amusing joke with some sun cream, and an amusing joke with a first night date.
Yeah, I think you'd stop worrying about whether or not the film's got any funny jokes in it. Okay.
It's really, consistently funny all the way through. It's just that as well as laughing, we're also going to be crying, Richard.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a lovely thought.
Luke Jones on an email. Richard, you say that Emma is a very unforgiving script editor. This will be Emma Freud, I'm imagining.
Yes, that's right.
How is she doing these days?
She can't afford shoes, apparently.
No, she's tough. And the very last day of this film, which might be the last day of my directing career, I woke up in astonishing pain. I'm in pain I'd never experienced the like of. And I said to him, I'm in such pain I can't do the job. And she said, oh, great. And she rushed out of the room, to direct the movie herself, forgetting to inquire what might be wrong, forgetting to ring the doctor in the highest possible spirits. And finally, a doctor did arrive 2 hours later. I had kidney stones or some such thing, and arrived on the set at 3 o'clock, and she'd finished the day's shooting, and they were celebrating with tea and
That's
cake.
all right. Hitchcock wasn't on set for half of the shower scene. You're fine.
All right, okay.
Anyway,
Thank God for that.
Luke Jones continues after saying, you say Emma is a very unforgiving script editor, scribbling red pen all over your drafts. How different is the finished film from the first draft you hand to someone to edit?
It always does. It always does change a lot. There are just so many parts of the process. I mean, in fact, Emma's a very tough hurdle to get over. And then the casting process reveals that some parts are much thinner than you thought. Some parts are going to work. Some relationships aren't right. Then you have the first read through and you cut about a quarter of it. Then you shoot the film. And then in the edit, this time we lost a third of it. So it's a long journey.
We only got 2 minutes before the news, but you said there, and you've mentioned before, that you have a feeling this might be the end of your directing career. What's your thought there?
Well, it was just one. I think the movie, as it were, covers where I've got to and thinking about life. And the message of the movie is try and enjoy life, and making movies is 500 days of pain. So Bill and I were walking along the beach as we were doing it. We were shooting on the beach, and we said maybe the next time we're on a beach, we should be just strolling along chatting about the movies we've made, rather than having 50 people, running up to us and saying it's inaudible, the sea's too loud.
So you don't enjoy directing movies?
Well, look, of course you relish the time with the people, and you love it at the very end of the day when you think you might have got it right. But just I find it, tense.
Terry Gilliam said that every day on set is chipping away at the dream. You start with the vision of the movie, and then every day it declines until you end up with what you finally got.
Well, there is some of that. But then sometimes, of course, they're better. Sometimes Rachel McAdams is fabulous in this movie, and she was so good in each scene that I thought I needn't have written any lines, because she just epitomizes either joy or nervousness or things like that.
Yeah, that wouldn't instill confidence. Yeah, you're great. Just make it up. Everyone else has got a script, but you're fine. Just do what comes into your head.
Richard, it's always a delight to have you on the programme. Thank you very much
good
indeed.
to be here.
When
You're
are you
very funny together.
Are you going to come in again and do something for us soon, or are you just going to retire?
Anytime you ask me, I've watched all the films that Mark was talking about.
Except for the dark, nasty ones.
Except for the dark, nasty ones. So invite me back anytime to talk about movies or anything.
Richard Curtis, his new movie is About Time. We'll talk about that, of course. And also Pain and Gain is about to be reviewed, the other side of the news.
Yes.
From the sublime
To
what?
not sublime.